Hey bikers, Pierce here with Electric Bike Report, and today we're going to figure out how to change a tube. You were out on your ride, you got that infamous thorn, and now you're stuck at home without a bike you can ride. So, what are the steps you need to go through to change a tube like so? There's a few, and they're quite simple once you're used to them. The first thing you'll need to know is the size of tire you have. That's the overall circumference, and also the width of the tire. Here we have a 20 by 4-inch tire, so it's very short, but also very wide. Because of that, I got the respective tube. So that one is pretty straightforward. Another aspect some people forget is which type of valve they need. There's gonna be two major valves, Presta valve, which is the skinny tall one, and Schrader valve, which is the shorter, thicker one that you probably have on your car as well. This bike here, it uses the Schrader valve, which is pretty predominant on these e-bikes. So once you have the tube you need, let's move into our first step. So the first thing you're going to do when repairing a flat tube is remove the tire. Some tires have a quick release where you have the handle on there and you simply undo the handle and it will drop out. But bikes like this have that axle bolted on. So I have my wrench here, adjusted to that size, and all I'm gonna do is loosen these nuts. Both are overall loose, but you'll notice the wheel is staying in. I loosen them enough that I can hand loosen or tighten them. And for this last part, I just like to do it with my hands to make sure I'm holding onto the wheel when it drops out. Okay, so your wheel is dropped out, but it's still flat. So what's the next step? Well, it's taking the tire off, so let's get into that. Okay, so if you're laying your wheel down, you always want to make sure that you have this rotor right side up. You never want to bend that rotor, otherwise you're going to hear some splicing. So first thing I do, I like to set the tire down in an area where I have the whole thing accessible, and then I'm going to get my tire levers. Tire levers are pretty easy to come by, they don't cost you a lot, and if you're doing a lot of riding, I'd highly suggest getting a pair just to take with you, along with the spare tube, of course. So, first thing I do is I put the wheel right side up, which drops the rim lower down, which is giving me some slack right here. That way, it's a lot easier to pull that over. And you'll notice there's enough slack that I'm actually able to do this with just my finger. But for example's purposes, we're gonna use our tire lever and get that tire out of the bead all the way around like so. Then, repeat on the other side. Rim drops down to the lower half of the tire. Then I'm gonna pry the tire off of the bead like so. You'll notice they're not connected anymore, and that's a good sign you did that properly. So at this point, you'll notice the valve is still actually in there. All you have to do is remove your cap and press that baby up and out. And because of the way this is set up, I'm actually able to remove tube and tire at the same time here, like so. Okay, so you've got everything off. Now you get your trusty tube, which as I mentioned earlier is that 20 by 3.5 to 4. These are pretty easy to come by at your local bike shop. If you don't have a lot of bike shops in your town, I'm sure Walmart carries these same tubes as well. And it's never a bad idea to stock up on these. You never know when you're gonna need them. Whether your bike's new or old, flats can come at any time, so it's good to be prepared. Alrighty, so we've got our tube undone here. And one of the things that I like to do with the tube before I put it in is inflate it a little bit so it has more shape and it molds to the inside of the tire a little better. Got that on there. You'll notice it's the Schrader valve, like we discussed. And I've got it inflated here enough to hold shape. So we're gonna put this baby aside, just hang it on our trusty little electric XB here. And now we're gonna look on the inside of this tire here. So we knew the tube popped, we don't know why yet. I'm guessing it was a thorn, but by checking the inside of the tire, we're going to be able to tell if there's anything still in there poking through. I know it's happened to me before. Sometimes you'll put in a brand new tube and it flats just like that. Usually that's because you don't inspect the inside of your tire to get out whatever was poking it in the first place. So the old tube and the new tube are basically the same. So I'm gonna run my hand along the inside here, and I actually found something right away, a little thorn. So I'm gonna get that out with my hands. Pretty easy, you can use a pair of tweezers as well. However, you can make sure the inside there is smooth. All smooth. Give it the visual look, make sure it looks good. And it looks like we are all good. So, next step, you're gonna get your wheel, and you're always gonna wanna make sure your tire goes on the right way. That is one that even some of the most experienced bike mechanics will forget. Sometimes you lose focus, you put your tire on the wrong way, and then the job takes twice as long overall. So, wheel goes this way. We know that because our rotor matches up with the caliper. We can tell by our tread pattern here that the wheel is going to rotate this way. So, the first thing you want to do is get one side of the tire on. It's kind of similar to how we got it off. So I have our tire right here and our wheel right here. I'm gonna put that wheel on the inside of the tire. Keep losing that Schrader valve cap. Just on the inside here. And then I like to kind of just massage on one side of that tire. Like so. You'll notice that you have this gap right here. That's where your tube's gonna go up and inside in. So we're gonna set this guy down for a sec and get our trusty new tube. Personally, I like to have the valve hole straight up. That way I can drop this in a little bit easier. So I'm gonna put our tube in all the way around. And then I'm gonna be looking for that hole to line up our valve. So it looks like it's right here. So we're gonna push that up in. Drops in there nicely like it was meant to be there in the first place. So with that being said, we are almost done. I like to massage this side of the tire back on to the inside of the rim with kind of one half on my waist, the other half over here, and I'm able to get a little bit more push and leverage that way. A lot of these tires will just go on with your hands, but a pair of these is gonna help if you do have a little bit thicker tire. So, that looks almost done. Now all we have to do is inflate the tire. So one big variable with inflating tires, especially with ones that hold this much volume, is what air pressure to run. There's a few variables when it comes to the air pressure you want to run. One, how much you weigh as a rider. The heavier you are, the more you're going to want to inflate your tires to kind of compensate for that weight. 20 PSI to a 100-pound rider is not 20 PSI to a 200-pound rider when it comes to performance. The next thing that you'll want to be aware of is the terrain you like to ride. This type of bike here is good for camping, and it's also good for the paved trails. So if you're camping, you're probably going to want a little bit lower pressure to absorb a lot of the gravel roads and stuff you may be doing. Keep in mind, you may be a little bit more risk at flats on those type of terrains. And if you're on the paved trail, you're going to want a little bit stiffer tire, faster rolling tire, so you'd use the higher end of the spectrum for PSI. On the sides of these tires, they often show what PSI range is preferred, and a tire like this is typically 5 to 30 PSI, which is a wide range when it comes to the performance and feeling these tires give. I, 165 pounds, riding this on road, like to have it around 20 to 25, and that's where I'm gonna inflate it for us today. So one thing you want to be aware of when inflating your tire is there is a chance that it's going to come off the inside of the bead here and end up like this. If you don't pay attention to that as you inflate your tire, you're going to hear a big bang. So you always want to make sure that the tire is staying on the inside of our rim here. If it looks like this as you're inflating it, you know it's coming off. So you're going to want to deflate the tire a little bit. This works just fine. And then you're gonna put that back on the inside of the rim there and inflate it again, paying better attention to what could happen. So letting some air out, just enough to get that back on, and then we'll resume inflating. Massage it back on, just like so. Looks like we're all good on this side. Looks like we're all good on this side. Now let's get back to pumping. Okay. It looks like that's all meshed together quite nicely now. As you can see, none of that tire bead is protruding from the rim. That's a good sign you put it on properly and inflated it just fine. So now I'm gonna screw this valve cover back on. I always like to give it a little bounce test after. It's just a good sign it's holding, has some air in it. And you always wanna make sure your rotor's matching up with your caliper. That's pretty straightforward, but it will just save you some time if you know this is on the same side as your caliper here. So, we're holding both nuts here. And we're just gonna raise it back in, lining up with that caliper. Sometimes you can use your knee. And just gonna make that go back in nice and easy. Hand tighten it first, and then get your trusty wrench. Do the few final turns with your wrench here. Seems to be holding in there just fine. Rolling like a dream, and you're ready to get back out on the trails. So kind of recapping what we just went over, you'll always want to make sure that you get the right size of tube for your tire and also the right valve type. A pair of these tire levers is also going to come in a lot of handy whether you're doing the service at home or trail side. Not all tires are this easy to get off, and having these little levers to pry the tire off are gonna save you a world of pain, especially in your fingers. Overall, this is a very easy thing to do. It just takes a couple of tries to get used to all the steps. Once you're familiar with how everything works, it's only a matter of time before you're the local mechanic in your neighborhood repairing everyone's bikes. We all love to ride, but not all of us know how to change a tire. So by knowing this, you're gonna be that much better of a rider and a bike enthusiast overall. So with that being said, expect a lot more of these tutorials in the near future. I'd love to hear what you guys think and what you wanna see, so be sure to leave a comment below if there's something you've never quite been able to understand how to do on your bike. Leave a like if this tutorial was helpful for you, and subscribe for future ones. My name is Pierce with Electric Bike Report, and I'll see you next time.